everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about something that's, absolutely essential if you're an enterprise Java developer trying to make sense of this modern cloud-native world. We're diving into MicroProfile. For years, enterprise Java was the king. No question. If you were building big, robust, serious applications, that's what you used. But then, the whole world shifted. Everybody started moving to microservices for that flexibility, that scalability. And it left us with this huge question, right? Was the good old, powerful, but let's be honest, kind of heavyweight world of enterprise Java, was it really ready for this brand new, super fast-paced distributed reality? Okay, so before we get to the solution, we've got to understand the problem. What were the actual, real-world growing pains that Java developers were hitting as soon as they tried to build microservices? And this slide, this really lays out the mismatch, doesn't it? On one side, you had traditional Java EE, what we now call Jakarta EE, which was amazing for building those big, single-unit monoliths. But the cloud? Well, the cloud needed the exact opposite. We didn't need these heavyweight, all-in-one frameworks anymore. We needed something lightweight, something modular. We couldn't wait for those slow, long release cycles. We needed to innovate fast. And maybe most importantly, our apps had to be fault-tolerant from the ground up, ready to handle failure in that, let's just say, unpredictable cloud environment. And look, this wasn't just a theoretical problem, right? This created a ton of new, everyday headaches for developers. All of a sudden, you're not securing one big app, you're trying to secure dozens, maybe even hundreds of tiny little services. You're juggling configs for dev, for staging, for prod. It's a mess, and you have to design everything so that if one little piece falls over, the whole system doesn't just collapse. It was a completely different ballgame, a whole new level of complexity. And that's where our story takes a turn. Facing all these challenges, a bunch of industry leaders and community folks got together and said, okay, we can fix this. They decided to build a new standard, something designed from the ground up for this new world. And this is the core idea right here. MicroProfile is not a replacement for Java. Think of it as enhancement, a turbo boost. It's basically a collection of open source APIs and rules, all managed by the neutral Eclipse Foundation. The whole point is to give developers the exact tools they need for microservices, but, and this is key, without making them throw away all the Java skills they already have. And you know what? It all happened pretty fast. The whole thing kicked off in 2016, and by 2017, it was already under the umbrella of the Eclipse Foundation. Now, that was a really smart move because it meant no single company could control it. It guaranteed it would stay neutral and community-driven. And today, yeah, it's pretty much a cornerstone of modern enterprise Java. All right, so we've covered the why of MicroProfile. Now, let's pop the hood and look at the what. What are the actual tools you get to use? Yeah, this is the question every developer asks, right? A cool idea is nice, but we need tools that actually solve our problems. So, what's really in the box? What do you get? Okay, the core of MicroProfile is what they call the platform specifications. Think of this as your starter pack, the absolute essentials you're going to need for pretty much any microservice. You've got config, so you can manage settings for dev, test, and prod without pulling your hair out. You've got health and metrics, which are super important for things like Kubernetes to know if your service is okay. Then there's stuff like JWT-off for security, and the REST client to make it way easier for your services to talk to each other. Now, hold on. I want to zoom in on fault tolerance for a minute because this is huge. In a distributed world, things will fail. It's not an if, it's a when. This spec gives you all these battle-tested patterns right out of the box. So a circuit breaker stops you from hammering a service that's already down. Retry does exactly what it sounds like. It tries again. A fallback gives you a sensible default if an operation fails. Seriously, this isn't just a nice-to-have feature. It's a must-have for building real-world cloud apps. So beyond that core sets, MicroProfile also has what are called standalone specifications. Think of these as the more advanced, optional tools. You're not going to need them for every single service, but when you do need them, man, they're powerful. Want a more flexible API than standard REST? Bam, there's GraphQL. Building a really complex event-driven system, you've got reactive messaging. This setup is great because it lets the platform grow without making the core tools bloated and complicated. So, we've seen the tools in the toolkit. Let's talk about the payoff. What are the real-world benefits? Why should you and your team even care about this? But wait, before we get to that list of benefits, we gotta address the elephant in the room. I know what you're thinking, especially if you're an enterprise Java dev. Okay, but what about Jakarta EE? Where does that fit in? The simplest way to look at it is all about scope. Think of Jakarta EE as this huge, comprehensive toolbox for building any kind of enterprise application. It's the whole shebang. MicroProfile, on the other hand, is laser-focused. Its one job is to optimize Java specifically for cloud-native microservices. So the most important thing to get here is that they are not competitors at all. In fact, they're complementary. MicroProfile actually builds on top of some core Jakarta EE technologies. A lot of runtimes you might already know, like OpenLiberty or Wildfly, they implement both. They really work together to make Java awesome in the cloud. And all of this leads to some really clear wins. First, you get a framework that's actually built for the job you're doing, which makes you way more productive because you're writing less boilerplate code. It's lightweight, it's resilient, and because it's a vendor-neutral standard, you don't get locked into one company's ecosystem. It's just exactly what you need for the cloud. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay, so let's wrap this up. What does all this mean for the big picture? For the future of enterprise Java? Really, you can think of MicroProfile as a bridge. It doesn't throw away the power and maturity of Jakarta EE. Instead, it takes all that goodness and tailors it perfectly for the microservices world we live in now. And that means your apps are portable, they can run wherever they need to. And maybe the biggest win of all is this. As a developer, you don't have to start over. All those years of Java experience, all that knowledge of the ecosystem, you can leverage all of it to build the next generation of apps. It's an evolution of your skills, not a revolution that makes them obsolete. Which leaves us with one last question to chew on. The cloud isn't going anywhere, right? It's the default platform now. So, a standard that perfectly blends the maturity of Java with the agility the cloud demands, well, that starts to feel less like just another framework and more like a blueprint for the future. So, I'll leave you with this. Is MicroProfile the blueprint for the next decade of enterprise Java?